I watched my daughter's hand tremble as she signed the nursing home admission papers, but it wasn't guilt making her shake. It was eagerness. She wanted me gone. After 43 years of sacrificing everything, of choosing them over every dream I ever had, my 3 children looked at me like I was a burden they couldn't wait to discard. I remember thinking that day would be the worst moment of my life. I was wrong. The worst moment came 6 months later when they all showed up at Meadowbrook Care Facility with 4 smiles and takeout Chinese food, acting like they'd never abandoned me. And the only reason they came back? They'd found out about the money. The $1.2 million inheritance from my mother that I'd never told them about. But here's what none of them knew. I'd already changed my will the day after they dumped me here. And I was about to let them destroy each other fighting over money that would never be theirs. My name is Margaret Chin, and for most of my 72 years, I believed that being a good mother meant erasing yourself completely. My husband David died when our kids were young. Emma was 12, Michael was 9, and little Sarah was only 6. I was 34 years old. Suddenly everything, mother, father, breadwinner, and the person who had to explain why daddy wasn't coming home. I took a second job cleaning offices at night, then a third job on weekends doing data entry. I wore the same 3 outfits for 5 years because every spare dollar went toward Emma's piano lessons, Michael's hockey equipment, Sarah's art supplies. I turned down promotions, declined dates, refused help from my mother. I was determined to do this alone. The kids grew up successful. Emma became a corporate lawyer in Seattle, married to Brad. Michael went into tech sales in San Francisco, married to Vanessa, who posted their perfect life constantly. Sarah became a real estate agent in Los Angeles, engaged to Connor, who worked in finance. They all lived these glossy lives in expensive cities hundreds of miles away. I stayed in our small Portland house, finally having time for myself. I started painting again, joined a book club, took pottery classes. I was lonely sometimes, but I was discovering who Margaret Chin actually was beneath 40 years of self-sacrifice. Then I turned 70, and things changed. I forgot where I put things, lost track of conversations, left the stove on once, and nearly caused a fire. My doctor said it was early-stage cognitive decline, not Alzheimer's yet, but heading that direction. Manageable with medication and support. I called Emma first. She said she'd talk to Michael and Sarah, that they'd come up with a plan. She made it sound supportive, but I heard something else underneath calculation. 2 weeks later, all 3 showed up with a unified front. They'd researched facilities, found Meadowbrook Care. Emma did most of the talking while Michael and Sarah nodded along. They had medical papers, statistics about rapid decline, horror stories about elderly people wandering off. Michael jumped in with financial concerns, said my house would need to be sold anyway. Sarah cried and said she couldn't focus on her wedding planning knowing I might be in danger. They made it sound like love. So I agreed. I signed the papers, let them pack up my house, sell my belongings, and move me into a small room with a twin bed and a window overlooking the parking lot. The first crack came on moving day. I overheard Emma on the phone in the kitchen, voice low but not low enough. She said, "It's done. She's signing everything over tomorrow. Once the house sells, we can finally book that trip to Italy you wanted." I realized then that they hadn't come to save me. They'd come to solve the problem of me. The first month at Meadowbrook was hell. The staff was overworked, the food was garbage, the other residents were too far gone or too depressed. My room smelled like disinfectant and old age. But the worst part was the silence from my children. Emma had promised weekly visits, came once for 30 minutes, spent most of it on her phone. Michael had said he'd call every Sunday, called twice, both under 5 minutes. Sarah had sworn she'd video chat constantly, sent a few texts with heart emojis, but never connected. Then my mother died. She was 96, living in Arizona, one of my only consistent connections. Her lawyer called, said I needed to come to Phoenix for the will reading. When I said I couldn't travel, he told me it was essential. There were significant assets involved. He told me the number, $1.2 million. My mother, who'd lived modestly her entire life, had been secretly smart with investments. She'd left everything to me. I felt stunned, then angry. She'd offered to help when David died, and I'd refused out of pride. She'd watched me struggle and never told me about this money. But then I understood. She'd been protecting it, knowing I would have spent it all on the kids. I flew to Phoenix with an aide, didn't tell Emma, Michael, or Sarah. At the will reading, my mother had included a letter. She wrote that she'd watched me disappear into motherhood, watched my children take, without giving back. She wanted me to have security and freedom. She wrote, "Don't let them consume this too, Margaret. You've given enough." I flew back with $1.2 million and didn't tell anyone. For the first time in months, I felt powerful. But something darker was growing in me. I wanted to see what would happen. Would they visit? Would they care at all if there wasn't anything left to inherit? 3 more months passed. Emma came once when Brad was in town. Michael called on my birthday, 15 minutes late. Sarah forgot entirely. I watched them live their lives on social media. Emma making partner, Michael vacationing in Bali, Sarah's engagement photos. Not one posted anything about their mother. Then someone made a terrible mistake. Through some administrative error, Emma found out about the inheritance. I knew the exact moment because she called for the first time in 2 months, voice bright and loving in a way that made my skin crawl. She'd been thinking about me, feeling guilty, wanted to make it up to me. She talked to Michael and Sarah. They all wanted to take me out for a special family dinner that weekend. I said yes because I wanted to watch them perform. That Saturday, they showed up looking polished and guilty. Emma brought expensive takeout. Michael had flowers. Sarah had a photo album. For 2 hours, they were perfect children, attentive, funny, asking about my health. Then Emma eased into it, asked if everything with Grandma's estate was settled. I played dumb, said there was a lawyer handling things. Michael offered to help manage any inheritance. Sarah got teary, said she wanted to make sure I was taken care of, that money shouldn't go to waste on facility fees. I watched them scramble to sound caring while basically asking how much they were getting. And I made a decision. I told them there was around $1.2 million. Their eyes lit up. I said I was considering dividing it equally between them since they'd been so supportive, that I wanted to make sure they were taken care of. Emma hugged me. Michael talked about how proud Grandma would be. Sarah cried and said this would really help with the wedding. And that's when I knew I had them exactly where I wanted them. The transformation was immediate. Suddenly, I had 3 devoted children again. Emma visited twice a week. Michael called every other day. Sarah video called, constantly showing wedding plans. They started competing. Emma would mention how much time she spent with me. Michael researched better facilities. Sarah talked about me living with her and Connor after the wedding. I played along, encouraged their rivalry with comments about who was being most helpful. I'd revised my will the day after they abandoned me. Everything going to charity. But I let them believe they were winning. I told them I was meeting with my lawyer to finalize distribution, that each should come with a proposal for how they'd use their share. Emma showed up with a bound presentation about family trusts and college funds. Michael had spreadsheets showing investment strategies. Sarah had Pinterest boards of the dream house with a wing design for me. Watching them compete for money they'd never get was satisfying and destroying me simultaneously. Because underneath their performances, they didn't care about me at all. They cared about what I represented. Then I turned them against each other. I'd tell Michael that Emma said something dismissive about his career. I'd tell Sarah that Michael thought she was too young to handle money. I'd tell Emma that Sarah was planning to contest the will. They started arguing during visits. I sat there watching my children destroy their relationships over money I was never giving them, and I felt nothing but cold satisfaction. They taught me that family was transactional. I was just playing by their rules. The day of the final will reading came. My lawyer Richard flew in to meet at Meadowbrook. Emma, Michael, and Sarah showed up dressed like they were going to a business meeting, barely containing their excitement. Richard pulled out documents, explained the estate was fully settled. He handed each of them an envelope. Inside was a letter from me and a check for $1,000, enough to cover their travel expenses. Emma's face went white. Michael looked confused. Sarah started crying. Richard read from my will. The entire $1.2 million was going to charity, half to Alzheimer's research, a quarter to a scholarship fund for children who'd lost parents, a quarter to funding better care facility conditions. Nothing to my children except those checks. Then he read my letter aloud. To my children, you taught me that love is conditional, that sacrifice is expected but never returned, that a mother's worth is measured by what she can provide. You were right. So, I'm providing one final lesson. The people you abandon don't owe you anything. The money you're not receiving represents exactly what you gave me after I gave you everything, nothing. I hope you use those $1,000 to visit me occasionally, out of actual love. But I won't hold my breath. Emma screamed that I was senile, that this wasn't legal, that she'd contest it. Richard explained that multiple doctors had evaluated my competency, that the will was ironclad. Michael sat there staring at the check, face empty. Sarah sobbed, saying she couldn't believe I'd do this. I finally spoke. I told them I knew exactly when they'd found out about the money, that I'd watched them suddenly remember they had a mother. The worst part wasn't that they'd abandoned me. It was that they'd come back thinking I was stupid enough not to notice why. Emma called me a bitter old woman. Michael said I'd always been selfish, that I'd given them nothing but poverty growing up. Sarah said I was punishing them for not being perfect. And there it was, the truth they'd been hiding. They resented me for struggling, for not having enough, for making them live in a small house and wear secondhand clothes. They'd always blamed me for their father dying, for not being more. They left. All three of them, one after another. I watched from the window as Emma and Michael argued in the parking lot while Sarah sat in her car crying. That was 8 months ago. None of them have called or visited. I'm still at Meadowbrook, but now I'm paying for a private room with a real bed, good food, and a garden view. I use the money for art supplies, books, luxuries that make this bearable. I donate regularly. I finally went to Italy, the trip Emma wanted to take with my house sale money. I hired a traveling nurse and spent 3 weeks in Rome, Florence, and Venice. I paint every day now. Real paintings of landscapes and memories and the life I never got to live. We're organizing a small show at the facility next month, proceeds going to Alzheimer's research. Sometimes I wonder if I was too harsh. But then I remember Emma's voice on moving day, Michael's spreadsheets, Sarah's Pinterest board. They didn't change. They just performed better. My cognitive decline has stabilized with proper medication and care. Turns out when you're not drowning in stress and loneliness, your brain functions better. I might have years left. Good years I get to spend on myself without guilt. I've made real friends here, other abandoned residents, overworked staff members. We're family now in a way my blood relatives never were. We show up for each other because we want to, not because we're obligated. I'm 73 now. I've lived through poverty, widowhood, single motherhood, and betrayal. But for the first time in decades, I'm living for Margaret Chin. Not someone's mother, not someone's burden. Just me. And if that makes me selfish in my children's eyes, I've learned to live with that. Because the people who call you selfish for finally choosing yourself are usually the ones who benefited most from your selflessness. I gave them everything for 43 years. I gave myself 6 months of grief. And now I'm giving myself whatever time I have left. They thought the inheritance was their ending. But it was actually my beginning. If this story spoke to your heart, don't let it fade. Subscribe to The Silent Parents, where every emotion finds a home.